Hello, this is John Armwood on the Armwood Opinion Channel, where we bring you issues dealing with politics, culture, and technology. Today's discussion is going to be about the impact of culture on our perspective and view of the world politically. And I'm going to do it as I usually do, as a personal narrative. And I'm going to talk about how my politics has been shaped throughout my life by my interest in culture. I was exposed to culture as a young child. My mother put me in ballet and tap when I was 3. I can still remember the nightmares that I had from ballet dancing. And I still remember my teacher, Mrs. Kemp. And I had that from the 3rd to the 6th grade, when to get out of it I was able to take piano lessons. And piano lessons I took for the next 8 years. And later on I took them for 2 more years. In school I had orchestral percussion in elementary school and cello in junior high school. And I was exposed at home to WQXR-FM, New York City's classical music station, and my father played jazz recordings while I was home also. While I was home, my father played WQXR and also played jazz recordings, particularly Louis Armstrong, Bessie Smith, and some Duke Ellington. I started personally getting into jazz as a teenager, hanging out with my friends, particularly a friend named Charlie, whose brother-in-law had brought back some jazz records when he was in the army in Germany, and started listening to people like Freddie Hubbard, Les McCann, and Eddie Harris. And that opened the door for me to start my own journey, and spending time in Greenwich Village record shops, Happy Tunes and Dayton's, and then going to the Village Vanguard, Slugs, the Village Gate, and going to see lots of live music. And in seeing this music, I got to know the musicians and people who were involved in the production of the music. And I came to see that the music had its own philosophy, its own outlook on life, which was very different from that of the dominant culture as a whole. And remember, this was during the time of the Vietnam War, so it was a time of a lot of political upheaval in this country. I began to see jazz as a metaphor for an ideal approach to democracy, where equality and liberty were not at odds with each other, where in fact the individuality, the liberty that the jazz musician expresses as easily as breathing was part and parcel of the community in which he or she performed, and that community being the group. And as a result of that, it was unusual for a jazz musician to perform solo by themselves. It happened, but very rarely, because in the group you could be nurtured, you could be accompanied, and that accompaniment would push you toward reaching greater heights than you would normally reach on your own. And that really struck me, because in a sense, that's something that society can do and does do for certain people. The idea of good housing, good health care, good education, which the rich benefit from, pushes them toward doing very, very well in their lives. But far too often, the poor and the working class do not get that nurturing, do not get that education, that good health care. Right now, Cuba has a lower infant mortality rate than the United States. That is disgraceful. And they've lived under American sanctions since 1959. And this is what, 60 years later, 2019? The reason is that our culture, to some extent, believes that the individual is sacrosanct. They act as if people came into this society and created everything for themselves, that they didn't have help from others in society. That's the concept of individuality that conservatives have been espousing since the days of Ayn Rand and William Buckley, through Ronald Reagan, Paul Ryan, and up until today. And it's a false narrative that they're giving. All of these folks have gotten help from society as a whole. But what it is they want it only for themselves. Unlike in jazz, where everybody gets a chance to be accompanied. Not just the leader, not just the other musicians, but everyone. And it's an egalitarian system. One person doesn't dominate. I mean, there's stories of how Miles Davis used to complain about the long solos that John Coltrane took when he was in his band from 1956 through 1959. Because Train, didn't know how to stop. And when he asked Coltrane, why he couldn't stop, Train responded that he just, had so much to say, he didn't know how to stop. And Miles said, "Riley, take the horn out of your mouth." But that expresses that individuality being expressed within the context of the group. And when things are going well, when things are really in the cut, as we say, or in the groove, the music transcends space and time. As Thelonious Monk used to say, the music is lifted off of the floor. I had the good fortune of seeing Monk a number of times playing at the Vanguard, along with people like Charles Mingus, McCoy Tyner, and many, many, many countless others, Ahmad Jamal, during my teenage years. And I saw this happen on numerous occasions. Miles I saw later. But the thing about jazz was it taught me that individuality was very important. Expressing oneself was very important, but one could not forget that one had to allow others the same opportunity. And if one took the freedom to express oneself, one had to give back, to nurture, to help others. And that is something that I truly believe in, and I feel that we do too little of in this society today. It's a marked contrast between the American model of democracy and the Scandinavian model, where helping others, where nurturing, where social democracy is a fact of life. And the outcomes for everyone in society is better there. It's better in Scandinavia because of this type of program. This is what AOC, Ms. Cortez, young congresswoman, is talking about. Bernie Sanders has been talking about it, and others. I think Bernie Sanders misses out by not understanding the impact of race, where AOC clearly does understand it. Well, she, has lived in the South Bronx all her life, where Bernie left Brooklyn when he was relatively young and moved to Vermont. So his experience is more limited. And he has a little bit of cockiness in him that keeps him, I think, from truly understanding. But be that as it may, we need a more communitarian society. A society not based upon a communist model where everybody is the same, patterning. Everybody has to have an equal amount of this, has to be the same. No. But where each person is nurtured in the way they need. Like when a saxophone player in jazz is soloing, the drummer's dropping some bombs behind him to push the player toward transcendence. But when the piano player's playing, the drummer may pull out some brushes, especially if he's playing softly. The crashes on the symbols are not going to be as loud. That's just, two examples of how the nature of individuality, the nature of nurturing changes depending on the needs of the particular individual involved. So the fear that many have of communal type society, a more socialist oriented society, are really misguided. Some of them are just based in greed, we know this, but others based in a lack of understanding. Alrighty, if you enjoyed this video, hit the check mark, and if you didn't enjoy it, hit the check mark twice. Subscribe to the channel to hear more videos like this, and I hope to see you in the next video. Have a good day. Thank you.